This essay example, as well as thousands of others, is available in text format on our website for free and without registration. Simply Google Ivy Panda Free Essays.
Greek and Roman Theater. Introduction. Theatrics in the ancient Roman Empire and among the Greeks was an important socio-cultural activity that the then administration embraced. It ranged from songs and dances to acting, but the two differed in some aspects. However, there were notable similarities, especially in the structural design of the theaters. This was due to the intense structural and architectural influence that the Greeks had over the Romans. Like all the other buildings whose architectural designs had been imported to Rome from Greek, the theaters were not exempted. The general design of the theater was similar. In both cases, it was built on a hill and a valley. The bottom of the valley had a flat semicircular floor with a diameter of 78 feet that acted as the acting floor. The audience seats were then semicircularly arranged from this floor in a succession where the seat behind was always higher than the one in front of it. Thus the audience at the back was the most highly positioned. The design was further involved in the seat arrangement that ensured that the actors were clearly heard by the people on the uppermost semicircular bench of the theater. It was usually unroofed, but in the Roman theater, there was a temporary cloth shelter that was put up in case there was rain or sun during the play or any other theatrics. Behind the semicircular orchestra, the acting stage, there was a wall that separated the rest of the auditorium and the orchestra. This wall was used as the current-day scene, where the actors used to change their attire. Further, killings in the plays were never done before the eyes of the audience and were always made behind the wall. The wall had entry points that actors used for both exit and entry to the orchestra. In both, acting was absorbed as part of the culture, and the genres addressed were socially fit and addressed the issues that the society was experiencing at that given moment. The Greeks were at war with the Persians, while the Romans were in the process of conquering and enlarging their already big empire. Roman theaters then spread to all the other parts of the world, especially in countries where the Roman Empire had its authority stamped on. The Greek theater also spread all over Europe, and most European theaters today can be traced back to the ancient Greek theater. The difference between Greek and Roman theater. Despite the architecture of the two theaters coming from the Greeks, there were some differences that later on emerged as a result of the site and material for construction as well as the specific conditions in the Roman Empire. The main structural difference between the Roman and Greek theaters was slight and came later as a change from the norm. There were not enough hills to build the theaters, hence the Romans were forced to build their theaters from level ground using blocks to raise the seats. The seats were made of Roman blocks and concrete. The theaters built within Rome were not hill-dependent at all since the city itself was not hilly. Despite the heavily borrowed architectural design from the Greek theater, the structures were not completely similar, with the Greek theater being 3/4 of a semicircle while the Roman theater was perfectly half a circle. The Roman theater had a permanent seating space at the base where the high officials and priests sat during plays. This was unlike the Greek counterparts that did not have these permanent sitting places for the high officials. Apart from the few structural differences of the theater highlighted above, there were other differences that involved the actual theatrics between the Roman and the Greek theaters, as will be discussed in the paper. A major difference between Roman and Greek art is the involvement of women in acting. Roman acting was very receptive to women, whereas the contrary was true in Greek drama. In the play Make Love Not War written by Aristophanes, Greek women went on a sex strike to persuade their men not to go to war against the Spartans. They declined to give in to the men's persuasions to have sex, and they eventually won it due to the sex starvation that men were going through with the ladies on strike. Although the play is largely feminine, all the actors in the comedy are men. The costume changed their appearance through the use of prosternita, which was a wooden structure that was placed on the men's busts to fake breasts, and progastrata, which faked a large tummy for pregnant women. In contrast, Roman comedy included women, and few masks were used. There were only 3 characters in the Greek plays, whereas more were present in the Roman plays. In a play like the Medea game by Euripides, there are very few characters that make the whole story flow. During the classical period, new inventions were made in the Greek theater that made the playwrights never use more than 3 actors. The use of masks was another major difference. The Greeks used different masks to represent different individuals or scenes. The Romans, on the other hand, mainly used real characters with some makeup to give the desired expression to the audience. At the same time, the masks were used to magnify the faces of the actors to the large crowd since there was a big distance from the orchestra to the highest audience. Masks were also used to distinguish between characters and their roles on stage due to the exaggerated facial expressions in the masks. On top of being used for plays, the Roman theater was as well used for other performances, such as nude dancing, acrobatics, and other festival occasions. This was not the case in the Greek theater, where the main performance in the theater was the plays. Finally, it is notable that the Greek theater concentrated on comedies and tragedy drama, whereas the Romans expounded from their tragedies to achieve diverse areas of acting. Other sports, such as gladiators, were introduced in the same arenas, unlike in Greece, where plays remained dominant in their theaters. Roman tragedy versus Greek tragedy. Conclusion. Both Greek and Roman theaters are great cultures that have been absorbed into the modern world. Modern sports arenas are designed in the ancient design of these two important historical theaters. Though they had structural similarities that were rooted in Greek architecture, the cultures were different, and the two theaters' main differences came as a result of the way plays and activities in the theater were carried out. This research paper on Greek and Roman theater differences was written and submitted by a student just like you. The IvyPanda Samples database hosts thousands of works similar to this one on various subjects. Visit ivypanda.com to find what you are looking for.